What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So, Michigan State travels to Eugene, Oregon on Friday night to play the Oregon Ducks at 9 o'clock on Fox. Now, this is obviously going to be a very challenging game. Back-to-back games last week against number 3 Ohio State, this Friday against number 6 Oregon on the road in a really tough environment to play in. What can we expect in this game from Oregon on their side of the ball as they present a lot of problems on offense and defense? What can Michigan State do to compete in this game, keep this one close, and possibly sneak out and steal a win in Autzen Stadium? And then, of course, lastly, our Week 6 college football bets. Wasn't so good last week, so let's just jump into it. Before we do, if you could, just hit that like and subscribe button down there for more content. MSU athletics is heating up. Obviously, MSU football in the meat of the schedule, moving into the meat of the schedule here. Oregon on Friday, bye week next week. MSU basketball just had their media day on Thursday. Men's on Thursday, women on Wednesday. MSU basketball kicks off their exhibition at Northern Michigan next Sunday, the 13th. Things are cooking up. The MSU women's soccer team is in the top 5, has been in the top 5 pretty much for half the season, if not the whole season, been in the top 15 all season long. Great time to be an MSU fan. And we cover it all here on the channel, so make sure, again, you hit that subscribe button down there to stay up to date with everything MSU going forward. First off, you got to start out with the head of the snake, and that's Dillon Gabriel, obviously transfer quarterback coming in from Oklahoma. On the year, 1,192 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception through the air. He's very multiple, moves the pocket well, gets out, can throw on the run, on target, very accurate quarterback. Can also just sit in the pocket, too, with time. Pretty good offensive line for him there in Oregon. If he has some time to deliver, he just can sit in the pocket and deliver that ball. Can also sneak out sometimes on some RPO action, take off as well. A couple times you've seen on tape from him, but he's a problem. He came into the year as one of the favorites for the Heisman. Oregon didn't start out the year super hot, but in my opinion, he's, still up in that category of potential Heisman, especially with some big games that they have coming up down the road. Then you move to the ground game. As a team, though, Oregon is only averaging 4.3 yards per carry. That's something that we'll come back to later that MSU can maybe possibly take advantage of. But their ground game is led by Jordan James, 386 yards on the year, 6 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns on the year. Leading receiver, they have a couple really good receivers, but led by Tez Johnson, 33 receptions for 311 yards and 4 touchdowns. Move over to the defensive side of the ball. Former Spartan Derek Harmon, 18 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. And then also Jordan Birch coming off the edge, 2.5 sacks on the year. Linebacker Bryce Botcher, tackling machine, 28 total tackles, 1 interception. Some things to look at, though, from the Oregon side. As we mentioned before, only 4.3 yards per carry. Obviously, Jordan James does have a better average, but as a team, only 4.3 yards per carry, which is manageable from a defensive perspective. They're less than 50% on third down this year. So if you can force some problems on first and second down, get them to third down, you have a decent shot of getting them off the field. They're also 1 for 3 on fourth down this year. The D-line didn't play well in the Boise State game, allowing 221 rushing yards, but they were also playing against a really good, if not the best running back in the country in that game. Oregon also fumbled 2 times in that Boise State game. That was another reason why that game was so close. Besides, Boise State is a really good team as well, but they were able to dominate on the ground. Oregon did not help them either, coughing the ball up. As I said, 2 fumbles for them. They had 2 special team touchdowns, though, a punt return and a kick return in that game to help them eventually squeak by and win that Boise State game. But really, the first couple games of the season, it's been a tale of 2 games. First 2 games against Idaho and Boise State, super close, super tight. Oregon didn't look like the Oregon that was coming into the year. The next 2 games, Oregon State and UCLA last week, completely different story. They looked similar to what we expected from Oregon coming into the year. They can hit explosive plays and really kill you on offense, so it's a tough task for the defense to try to cover, especially when they're rolling. But as we said, get them to third down and try to get them off the field. Not good percentages on third and fourth down on the year. Not a great rushing attack. It's a good rushing attack, but not like Ohio State that we just saw. And we thought that our guys held up pretty well against Ohio State. So you want them to hopefully try to lean on that run game. So we're going to need a big game from the secondary to try to force them into that rushing attack, which MSU has had a really good rush defense this year. The key to making this game competitive and getting a win here is getting pressure on Dylan Gabriel. Try to make him as uncomfortable as possible. 81% completion percentage on the year is insane. The first 2 games, he was sacked 7 times. The last 2 games, 0. So they've really cleaned that up on the offensive line. As I kind of briefly mentioned before, we saw in the Boise State game with arguably one of, if not the best back in the country, and Ashton Jeanty having success running the ball for a lot of yards. And as we mentioned earlier, as I said, I think that's an avenue for success for MSU. But Michigan State's inability to be consistent running the ball, only a 4.1 total average per rush, so not far off what Oregon's team average is per rush. We have seen them be able to hit some explosive, just not consistently. We saw Nate Carter hit one earlier this season. We saw him kick off last game with a 19-yard run to start the game, and then we've seen K'Ron Lynch-Adams as well. First game of the season, what did it end up being? 75, 77-yard touchdown there in the first game for Michigan State's touchdown. And then he's had a couple other explosive plays as well. Just haven't seen enough of it consistently. You do got to put some of it on the backs, but a lot of it you got to put on that offensive line, which been so unfortunate with some injuries on the offensive line too. Mix and matching, finding the right combinations as we're moving through the season. Hopefully we're at the point now that, you hopefully have a group, and you knock on wood that no one else gets injured, and then that this is the core group that you have, and they can start, as we said, especially over the last week or so, kind of building that cohesion that you see as you move into the meat of the schedule. Then lastly, you got to win the turnover battle. We're going to talk about it every week. With this team this year, the turnovers have been a problem. No secret about it. Everyone in the room knows it. Everyone watching knows it. But we saw when Oregon has struggled this year, it was them turning the ball over and coughing the ball up on offense. As we said, Michigan State has struggled all year in terms of turning the ball over. Even the games they won, the Maryland game, Aiden Childs still, even though he threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, he still had 3 interceptions. And then obviously it's not just Aiden Childs as well. K'Ron Lynch-Adams on the kick return, fumbling the ball to Jack Velling last week, fumbling the ball. It's not just Childs. It's an offensive thing, a whole team thing in terms of not being able to hang on the ball. So winning that turnover battle is key if you want any shot in this game. If you can win the turnover battle, you have a better shot, as I said, of hanging in this game. But if you can win the turnover battle, especially by 2+, you could steal a win here in Autzen Stadium. But anyway, as I said, kind of going into the Ohio State game, obviously, I think if the guys show up, the defense plays how they've played this year so far, and the offense can play kind of, not saying they had to play perfect, but mistake-free, as we just talked about, not turning the ball over, and, kind of that short stuff. It seems like we've been talking about it for a while, but it's because it's kind of what we need to see to get this offense going, and we've seen it be successful. Like, yes, Childs can throw the 70-yard bombs, but it's those dump down screen passes, Montori Foster, little 5-yard ins, Jerron Glover, Nick Marsh on, slants across the middle. Just these small little routes to get the receivers in motion, get Childs in motion, and hopefully that'll kind of open up to get that run game going, where we said that Michigan State can possibly try to attack Oregon's defense. But it's going to be an incredible environment to play in. Looking forward to watching on Friday night. Now let's move into our Week 6 college football bets, and last week was horrible. Not a banner week for us here. 0 for 4. So we're 11-13 on the season now. Let's just jump right in though. Michigan State alternate spread plus 17.5 at Oregon. Got that at plus 164. Next up, Missouri money line at Texas A&M plus 106. Then Clemson alternate line minus 23.5 at Florida State. Got that at plus 230. And then lastly, Washington alternate line minus 6.5 versus Michigan, plus 164. All that together is plus 46.37. $5 wins you $200 $31.90. So anyway, that'll do it for this Michigan State Oregon preview. Hopefully it's a good game. Obviously, Jonathan Smith, very familiar with Oregon, playing for Oregon State, coached at Oregon State, and so he's familiar with Oregon, this old rivalry that he was a part of. So I know he'll have the guys fired up going Friday night. So let's try to sneak out of there with a win, go into the bye week with some good vibes. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.